There are moments in a quiet afternoon when you find yourself staring at drifting clouds and suddenly asking, am I truly living for myself, or am I merely playing a role others expect me to? Many of the smiles we wear feel rehearsed. Many of the words we speak are meant only to avoid judgmental eyes, and yet after all of it, the heart remains heavy, like a narrow corridor where light barely enters. Life often feels like a lone traveler walking across a desert. Companions may walk beside us, but no one can carry our footsteps across the dunes. The sand shifts beneath us, the wind cuts across our faces, and yet the direction of our journey must come from our own stride. Others may accompany us, but no one can truly finish the path on our behalf. Long ago, someone asked the Buddha, "Lord, how can I live in such a way that everyone is pleased with me?" The Buddha smiled and replied, "If you live to satisfy all people, you will lose yourself. Keep your heart pure and live in mindfulness. Praise and blame belong to the world, not to you." Those words sound simple, like a breeze passing through a valley, but to truly embody them is a long pilgrimage, one of letting go, awakening, and choosing presence over approval. We are often tied down by careless remarks. A single dismissive comment can echo in our minds all day, like a faint crack spreading across a mirror. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being disliked, fear of disappointing others. These fears consume us. Yet have you noticed how people will always have something to say? When you are struggling, they may label you useless. When you succeed, they may call you arrogant. If you keep running after their voices, will you ever arrive at peace? Look at nature for guidance. A mountain peak does not wait for anyone's applause to stand tall. A candle in the night does not ask for recognition before it glows. They embody what they are. Human beings are no different. Only when we dare to live authentically can we taste freedom. Life is impermanent, like mist dissolving as the morning sun rises. If you keep bending under the weight of other people's opinions, you may miss your own chance to breathe fully. The art of living does not lie in pleasing everyone, but in keeping your heart clear, like a window that remains transparent despite storms outside. Mindfulness is that window. It allows us to see which voices deserve to enter and which are nothing but passing noise. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a slow breath. Picture a small lantern glowing in your chest, a flame that is yours alone. No one can extinguish it unless you allow them to. From this breath forward, promise yourself that you will live truthfully, that the whispers of the world will not drown out the voice of your heart. There will be evenings when the last sunlight filters through the branches and you hear the wind brushing against dry leaves. In such stillness, you may finally understand the path of life is yours alone. Others may guide, others may share, but no one can walk it for you, nor carry the weight of your choices. The Buddha once taught, "By oneself is evil done. By oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil left undone. By oneself is one purified." Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. This teaching is straightforward yet profound, for in the end our life is sculpted by our own hands. Others may point out directions, but they cannot step in our place. Consider a pearl within a rough shell. It forms not because another shell carries the burden, but because within the darkness, grit and pressure are transformed into radiance. In the same way, a human being only matures when they endure their own challenges. If we expect others to carry every hardship, we remain unformed like shells without pearls, empty within. Perhaps you are weary now. Perhaps you have lost your job, ended a relationship, or mourned a loved one. The road ahead may look like a corridor without light, yet even in the thickest fog, there is a quiet lamp within you. Do not forget you have feet to walk, hands to hold tomorrow. Independence is not isolation. It is the first step toward standing strong, from which deeper love and compassion can flow. When you truly realize that the journey is yours, you begin to care less about applause and criticism. Both are like echoes in a canyon, loud but fading. What matters is not the echo, but the steps that carry you forward. And one day, when you turn back, you will see that each trial has become a footprint worth cherishing. My friend, if tonight you feel lost, pause. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and whisper to yourself, "This is my path. I will walk it slowly, but steadily." Let each breath remind you that you are still here, still alive, still with the chance to continue. Every deliberate step is a quiet vow, not to abandon your own life to anyone else's control. And when the evening wind shakes the branches, when a withered flower drops gently to the ground, remember, just as that flower lets go of the stem, you too have the right to release the eyes of judgment and return to living as yourself. There are nights when the city finally grows quiet and you lie awake in the dark, haunted, not by the noise outside, but by the echoes of your own past. Perhaps it was a careless word spoken in anger, or a decision made in haste. Yet the weight of those moments lingers like dust in a room you have not opened for years. No matter how much you try to brush it away, the faint residue clings. But who has lived without mistakes? Are not our missteps the very chisels that carve resilience into our character? The Buddha once taught, "The wise see their faults as an enemy to be avoided." Yet he also reminded us that recognizing a mistake is not about punishment, but transformation. A fault is not a permanent stain. It is like clay before the potter's wheel, rough at first, but capable of being reshaped into something useful and beautiful. Think of a cocoon hanging silently under a branch. At first glance, it seems like a dead husk, lifeless and constrained. Yet within a profound transformation unfolds. The caterpillar cannot avoid the darkness of confinement, nor the pressure of change. And yet, when the time comes, wings emerge. Our mistakes function in the same way. What appears to be ruin may secretly be a rebirth. I once met a man who had lost everything in a failed venture. He told me that for years, shame sat on his chest like a stone slab. He could not look anyone in the eyes, convinced that his failure defined him. But one morning, while repairing an old clock in his workshop, he noticed how every broken gear could be replaced, polished, and reset into motion. The clock, though once silent, could tick again. He realized that he too was not ruined beyond repair. Slowly, he began to rebuild his life, and though it was different from before, it ticked with a steadier rhythm born of patience. Happiness, then, is not reserved for the flawless. It lives also in those who fall and stand again, who turn the fragments of their broken glass into mosaics that catch the light in unexpected ways. If we fear mistakes so much that we never risk stepping forward, we will never know the taste of discovery. The ocean reveals itself only to those who dare leave the shore. Try just for a moment to look at one of your old wounds differently. Instead of seeing it as a scar, imagine it as a doorway carved into the stone of your life. On the other side lies a garden you could not have reached without passing through pain. Perhaps the door was heavy, and perhaps you resisted, but without it, that hidden garden would remain unknown. I recall a woman who carried regret like a hidden weight for decades. She believed her youth was wasted, that opportunities had passed her by. But when she finally spoke of her sorrow, Her voice cracked open like a dry seed exposed to rain, and in that moment of vulnerability, she discovered connection. Others stepped closer, drawn by her honesty. What she once considered her weakness became the very bridge that connected her to others. We often imagine that perfection is the ticket to love, to peace, to meaning. But it is our imperfections, acknowledged, embraced, transformed, that give us depth. A perfectly smooth stone skips across water, but leaves no mark. A jagged stone sinks, but it anchors itself in the riverbed. In that sinking, it finds stability. So if today you find yourself blaming your past, take a breath. Place your hand over your chest. Whisper, "This too is part of me. This too has shaped who I am." The act of acceptance does not erase the wound, but it allows healing to begin. And remember, a broken instrument can still play music, often with a timbre more haunting and beautiful than before. In the same way, your life touched by errors and regrets can still become a song worth listening to. And as you carry this awareness forward, notice how the heart begins to soften. The burden of mistakes loosens, making space for another lesson, not about the past, but about the voices we face each day, the words of others that can lift or wound. To meet them wisely, we must continue this journey inward, where discernment and stillness are waiting. Words, they arrive uninvited, sometimes sweet as spring rain, sometimes sharp as winter wind. A single remark can linger in the mind like smoke that refuses to leave a room. Someone's careless opinion spoken in seconds can replay in us for days, shaping our moods as if they held the strings to our emotions. But is it truly the words that wound us, or our grip on them? The Buddha once said, "Even the Tathagata is praised and blamed." How could ordinary people escape the tongues of the world? This truth is both humbling and liberating. If even the enlightened cannot avoid criticism, why should we waste our energy trying to outrun it? Imagine your mind as a grand hall with many doors. Praise and criticism are like visitors knocking. You are the keeper of the keys. Some guests bring wisdom like a teacher offering guidance, let them in. Others are rowdy and unkind, arriving with no respect. You may close the door without guilt. Not every knock deserves an answer. I once listened to a story told by an elder monk. A man came to him frustrated by cruel gossip. The monk silently lit a stick of incense and placed it in the man's hand. "What do you feel?" he asked. "The smoke burns my eyes," the man replied. "Yes?" The monk nodded, but notice how the fragrance also spreads quietly, regardless of whether people notice it. Words can sting like smoke, but your essence can remain like fragrance. The smoke passes, the scent lingers. This is the heart of discernment, not letting every voice that enters define who you are. For if we allow each passing judgment to carve into us, our spirit becomes like soft clay, reshaped endlessly by outside hands. But if we choose to let only truth and compassion enter our being, hardens into something like fired pottery, strong, purposeful, enduring. A friend once confessed how she used to cry herself to sleep after colleagues mocked her, but over time she began practicing a simple shift. Each time she heard criticism, she asked herself, "Is this a mirror or just a shadow?" If the words reflected something real she could learn from, she treated them as a mirror, polishing herself. If they were only shadows, vague, distorted, rooted in someone else's pain, she let them pass. Slowly, she found her freedom. To live wisely is not to block out the world, but to filter it. Just as the lungs sift oxygen from air, keeping what sustains and releasing what harms the mind too can learn to breathe through words. We take what nourishes, we exhale what poisons. Think of standing by a train track. Each train rushes by with noise and speed. If you try to jump on every train, you'll be dragged in directions not your own. But if you stand still and watch, you see that not every train is meant for you. Some are empty, some overcrowded, some simply passing through. The same is true with people's opinions. You don't need to board them all. And when you resist the pull of constant reaction, something remarkable happens. Silence grows within you. This silence is not emptiness, but spaciousness, like a vast night sky in which the chatter of voices becomes no more than passing stars. So next time words come, whether honeyed or harsh, pause. Ask, does this truth belong to me, or does it belong to them? If it belongs to them, let it remain with them. The refusal to carry what is not yours is not weakness, it is wisdom. And as this wisdom takes root, you begin to see that life is not defined by what others say, but by how you choose to carry your own journey. From here, another realization awaits failure too, as its lessons and loss may open doors we once feared to enter. Failure. The word itself often feels like a heavy curtain falling across the stage of our lives. When plans crumble, when dreams dissolve, we may believe the performance is over. Yet what if failure is not the end of the play, but the pause before the orchestra begins a new movement? Many of us treat failure like a locked door, something final and unforgiving. But look closer. Sometimes the door is only wood weakened by time, waiting to be pushed open into a different room. The grain of the wood, though scarred, still carries beauty. Its cracks let the light seep through. I once knew a man who had invested everything into a business only to watch it collapse overnight. For months, he walked as if carrying chains, shoulders bent, eyes avoiding others. Then one day, while repairing his garden fence, he noticed the old wood planks, weathered and splintered, could still be reshaped into something new, a small bench where he later sat in the evenings. His failure had broken him, yes, but the fragments could be refashioned. He began to rebuild his life, not as it was, but as something sturdier, more humane. Think of volcanic soil. To the untrained eye, it looks barren, blackened by destruction. Yet it is precisely this soil that grows the sweetest fruit for the earth, though scarred by fire, holds hidden nutrients. Our losses and mistakes act in the same way. They scorch, they blacken, but in time, they also nourish. Happiness is not found in a life free of errors. It emerges when we allow our errors to compost into wisdom. A field cannot remain green if the old stalks are never returned to the soil. Likewise, we must return our failures to the heart, not to torment ourselves, but to feed the roots of resilience. I recall a woman who, after losing her career, believed she had nothing left. For months, she stayed indoors, ashamed, convinced she had wasted her existence. But one day, she began sketching quietly in a notebook. What began as rough lines slowly blossomed into art. I thought my life had ended, she later said, but it had only shifted its canvas. The ashes of her old life became the charcoal strokes of her new one. It is not the number of times we stumble that defines us, but the rhythm with which we rise. A dancer may miss a step, yet it is often the recovery that creates the most graceful movement. In the same way, life's choreography is not ruined by mistakes, it is shaped by them. So if you feel crushed by failure, breathe. See it not as an executioner's verdict, but as a sculptor's strike against marble. The stone chips away, yes, but each strike reveals a shape not visible before. In time, the outline of something new, something truer begins to emerge. Let failure be a teacher, not a tyrant. Its lessons are rarely gentle, but they are unforgettable. Just as a storm tests the ship and makes the sailor skilled, our setbacks teach us to navigate life with steadier hands. And when we accept failure as part of the sculpture of our lives, the heart grows lighter. In that lightness, we begin to notice joy in smaller places, not only in grand victories, but in the quiet, unassuming moments we often overlook. We often imagine happiness as a distant treasure, hidden behind mountains of success or buried beneath layers of recognition. Yet when we finally reach what we thought would bring us joy, the promotion, the applause, the approval, how quickly the thrill dissolves like ink fading in sunlight. The truth is, happiness is not stored in these external vaults. It waits quietly in the ordinary, often overlooked corners of life. The Buddha once reminded his disciples, happiness is not a destination, but the very path you walk. To live as if joy is a prize to be collected one day is like carrying an empty cup past a flowing spring, waiting for some future moment to drink. Meanwhile, water glimmers right at our feet. Consider the traveler who pauses on a mountain trail. If he lifts his eyes only toward the summit, he may never notice the wildflowers scattered by the path, their colors glowing against the stones. But if he bends down even briefly, he discovers beauty that does not depend on conquest. So too with life, the richness lies not only in grand milestones, but in the pauses we allow ourselves to notice. I once met an elderly woman who had spent her life in tireless devotion to her family. Only when her body grew frail did she realize how many simple joys she had passed by. I never sat to watch the rain fall, she confessed. I never lingered with a warm cup of tea. I thought happiness would come later, but later kept moving farther away. Her words were like a bell ringing through silence. Happiness had always been within reach, yet she had hurried past it. To see joy in simplicity is to free yourself from the exhausting chase of more. The child who laughs at the flicker of a candle understands something the hurried adult has forgotten, that wonder lives in the present. A meal shared without haste, a breeze brushing your skin, the kindness of a stranger's smile. These are not fragments of life, they are the substance of it. Think of life as a woven tapestry. The golden threads of triumph are bright, yes, but they are few and far between. The real strength of the fabric lies in the countless ordinary threads that cross one another quietly. To ignore them is to miss the design. To honor them is to see that the pattern of happiness has always been unfolding beneath your hands. Try even just once today to let yourself linger. When you drink water, taste it fully. When you step outside, feel the ground hold you. When you listen to another, let their words settle before rushing to respond. These small gestures are not trivial. They are the gateways through which contentment walks in. Happiness is not in the applause of the world, nor in the weight of possessions. It is in the moment when the heart feels light, when the breath feels enough, when you realize that nothing is missing. And once you begin to see happiness in such ordinary ways, the question arises, why do we continue to strain ourselves under the gaze of others? From here, the journey turns toward understanding the burden of appearances and how releasing them can restore the heart's freedom. There are days when we bend ourselves into shapes we no longer recognize, simply to remain acceptable in the eyes of others. We dress our words, polish our smiles, measure every step against invisible expectations, and yet beneath the careful performance, our spirit feels caged. The search for approval becomes a theater in which we are both actor and prisoner. An old proverb says, "The voice of the crowd is like wind, it comes and goes, never staying in one place." Yet how often do we build our houses out of that wind, only to wonder why they collapse so easily? To live by the shifting standards of others is like chasing shadows at dusk. Just when you think you've caught one, it lengthens, changes shape, and slips away. The Buddha taught that praise and blame are like travelers stopping briefly at an inn. They enter, they leave. They are never meant to take up permanent residence in the mind. If we treat every compliment as a crown and every criticism as a chain, then our identity becomes a marketplace where strangers barter for our peace. Imagine your heart as a quiet library. Each opinion offered by others is like a book brought to the door. Some books hold wisdom worth placing on the shelves. Others are filled with noise better left outside. If you allow every single book to pile inside, the library becomes so crowded that silence, the very essence of learning, disappears. I once met a man who confessed that he had lived most of his life like a puppet pulled by strings. Every comment about him, good or bad, tugged at those strings, jerking him into reactions he barely understood. Only when he began to practice discernment did he realize that the strings were never truly held by others. They were tied by his own willingness to be controlled. Cutting them was not rebellion, but release. True strength is not in pleasing all, but in knowing when to listen and when to let go. A skilled musician does not strike every key on the piano, only those that belong to the song. In the same way, we are called to select carefully which voices we allow to play within us. So if you find yourself restless under the weight of opinions, breathe. Remind yourself, I was not born to be everyone's reflection. I was born to be my own flame. A flame does not ask the wind for permission to burn. It simply shines. And when you begin to release the obsession with appearances, life softens. The heart feels lighter, like a traveler laying down unnecessary baggage by the roadside, realizing at last that the journey itself is enough. With this newfound lightness, the question turns inward again. How do we face the mistakes and regrets of the past without drowning in them? From here, the path leads us into the art of forgiveness, not of others, but of ourselves. There are nights when memories of our mistakes sit beside us like uninvited guests. A word we should not have spoken, a choice we rushed into, an opportunity we let slip. These fragments return in silence like echoes in a canyon that refuse to fade. We lie awake, believing that our errors have carved permanent scars, as though they define the whole of who we are. But mistakes are not prisons. They are crossroads. They point us to where we must pause, reflect, and choose differently. The Buddha once reminded his disciples, "The wise see faults clearly, and by seeing, avoid repeating them." To see is not to chain ourselves to regret, but to unlock the door of growth. Imagine walking through a workshop filled with broken pottery. At first glance, it is only ruin. Yet in some traditions, the fragments are not discarded, but repaired with veins of gold, creating vessels stronger and more beautiful than before. Our regrets, too, can become seams of wisdom, lining the cracks of our lives with resilience. I once spoke with a young man who had failed in business and carried shame like a heavy cloak. He told me he avoided people's eyes, convinced his worth was lost. Then, during a quiet morning walk, he noticed an old tree stump in the park. From its split center grew a new branch, fresh and green. He realized that endings are rarely absolute. Something new had already begun inside him, waiting for the courage to grow. Mistakes are not curses, they are mirrors. If we look closely, they reveal what we must release and what we must nurture. If we refuse to look, we remain trapped in repetition. And if we look with compassion, we discover that our past is not an enemy, but a teacher dressed in rough clothing. Consider the painter who in frustration spills ink across a canvas. At first, it seems ruined, but by shifting perspective, the stain can be turned into the backdrop of something entirely new. so too with our lives, the blotches of error can become the foundation of a deeper, truer masterpiece. The hardest forgiveness is not for others, but for ourselves. To release guilt is not to erase responsibility, but to accept that growth often emerges through imperfection. The stone that trips us on the path is the same stone we later use to mark how far we have come. So if you find yourself tormented by old regrets, breathe deeply and place a hand on your chest. Whisper, "I was mistaken, but I am not the mistake. I am the learner who grew from it." This small shift can turn the weight of shame into the seed of renewal. And as forgiveness begins to soften the sharp edges of regret, the heart makes room for a gentler truth, that life's value is not measured by perfection, but by the courage to keep walking. From here, we move toward the art of embracing the present moment, where peace quietly waits. The present moment often slips through our fingers, not because it is fragile, but because we are rarely awake to hold it. We chase tomorrow with restless eyes, or we replay yesterday until its shadows fill our minds. Meanwhile, the only true place where life exists here now waits quietly, unnoticed. The Buddha once said, "The present is the greatest gift," and indeed time is not a vault of endless tomorrows. It is a river that moves only in one direction. The past is already downstream. The future has not yet arrived. What rests in your hands is this single drop of water glimmering in the light. I once met a man who spent years consumed by ambition. He ate meals in haste, answered family with distracted nods, convinced that joy would come once his goals were secured. But when his mother passed unexpectedly, he sat in her empty chair and felt a silence deeper than any success he had achieved. He realized that the conversations he postponed, the shared cups of tea he rushed through, could never be reclaimed. From that day, he promised himself that presence, not accomplishment, would be the measure of his life. Life is not unlike a piece of music. If you listen only for the crescendo, you miss the tenderness of the quieter notes, the pauses. The silences between sounds are what make the melody whole. So too, happiness is not found in waiting for one grand event, but in embracing the subtle harmonies woven into ordinary days. Try for a moment to notice what is already here. The warmth of your breath as it enters and leaves, the way the morning light rests on your hands, the pulse in your chest steady and faithful. These are not insignificant details. They are the threads of life itself. To ignore them is to miss the very fabric of being alive. Think of a traveler in a bustling market. The stalls are filled with noise and color, each merchant calling out, vying for attention. It is overwhelming until the traveler pauses at one corner to truly savor the fragrance of ripe fruit. In that pause, the market changes from chaos to richness. The present moment is like that corner. When we choose to pause, life shifts from blur to clarity. It is not that our responsibilities vanish, but that we meet them with steadiness instead of panic. Washing a dish, we know we are washing a dish. Listening to a friend, we know we are listening. Breathing, we know we are breathing. These are the simplest practices, yet they transform the weight of existence into lightness. And when we learn to live fully in the now, regrets soften and anxieties loosen their grip. For the present is the only space wide enough to hold peace. From this awareness of the present, another truth begins to bloom. Peace is not the absence of burden, but the art of carrying only what is truly ours. To explore this, we turn toward the nature of letting go, not as loss, but as liberation. Letting go is perhaps one of the most misunderstood acts of the human heart. We often think it means losing, abandoning, or being left with emptiness. But in truth, letting go is less about losing and more about creating space for something new, to breathe space for the self to stand unburdened. The Buddha once taught, "Attachment brings suffering. Freedom is found in release. Yet release does not come easily. We cling to what we know even when it hurts, the way a hand clutches thorns and cannot imagine opening. We fear the hollow that might remain if we loosen our grip, but life has its own wisdom. When one hand opens, another is freed to receive." Imagine a traveler walking a long mountain path, carrying a backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents an old resentment, a forgotten dream, or a burden we swore we must bear. At first, the weight feels manageable, but as the climb grows steeper, every step is pain. Only when the traveler begins to set down the stones one by one does the journey reveal its beauty. The wind through the pines, the vastness of the horizon, the strength of lighter steps. Letting go is not weakness. It is an act of courage, for it requires trust. Trust that life can hold us even without the props we cling to. The bird does not leap because it despises the branch. It leaps because it trusts the sky. I once knew a woman who could not release her anger at a betrayal. For years, she replayed the wound like a melody she could not silence. But when she finally spoke her pain aloud, she felt as if a knot in her chest had loosened. It wasn't forgiveness I needed first, she realized, but the willingness to stop rehearsing the pain. In giving up the constant replay, she gained the space to heal. Think of autumn trees. Their branches do not mourn the leaves that fall. They let them drift away, knowing that new buds will come when the season is right. In the same way, when we release what no longer serves us, we discover the natural rhythm of renewal within ourselves. The paradox is that by letting go, we do not end up with less. We end up with more clarity, more breath, more freedom. A clenched fist holds tightly, but receives nothing. An open palm may look vulnerable, but it is the only way to hold the gift of life. So if you carry heaviness today, pause. Ask yourself, what stone am I carrying that no longer belongs to me? Set it down gently. Notice how the path feels beneath lighter feet. The act of letting go is not erasure. It is remembering that you were never meant to live your whole life in chains. And once the heart learns the art of release, something unexpected appears, a deeper compassion, not only for ourselves, but for others. From here, the journey leads us toward the boundless practice of compassion, the thread that weaves all beings together. Compassion is often spoken of as a virtue, yet it is far more than a gentle feeling. It is the recognition that within every person's story, even the one that wounds us, lies a common thread of struggle and longing. To practice compassion is to look beyond the surface of actions and glimpse the trembling heart beneath. The Buddha taught, "As a mother protects her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings." This teaching is not an invitation to sentimentality, but to profound courage. For to meet another's suffering without turning away requires a strength deeper than judgment. Imagine walking through a crowded train station. People rush in every direction, their eyes fixed ahead, their expressions weary. On the surface, they seem distant, perhaps even cold, but if you pause and look more closely, you notice the small signs: the father gripping a child's hand tightly, the student nervously clutching exam papers, the elderly woman adjusting her heavy bag. Suddenly, what seemed like indifference reveals itself as countless silent battles. Compassion begins the moment we recognize that everyone carries an unseen weight. I once knew a man who had lived through great hardship. Instead of becoming bitter, he became attentive to the smallest needs of others. A glass of water offered, a chair pulled closer. When asked why, he replied, "I cannot remove all the storms from others' lives, but I can hold an umbrella when the rain falls near me." His kindness was not grand, but steady, and in his steadiness, people found shelter. Compassion does not mean excusing harm. It means understanding that harm often arises from blindness, from fear, from wounds unhealed. To see this does not justify the action, but it transforms how we respond. A flame met with anger only grows higher, but a flame met with water softens into smoke. Think of compassion as the roots of a tree. They spread unseen beneath the earth, weaving with the roots of other trees. Alone, one tree may topple in a storm, but a forest joined underground endures. So too with people. When we extend care beyond ourselves, we weave a web of resilience that sustains all. Practice begins simply. Listen when someone speaks, even if you disagree. Offer patience where irritation tempts you. Choose gentleness where harshness feels easier. These small acts are not minor, they are the very fabric of peace. And when compassion is extended outward, it inevitably circles back inward. For in seeing the humanity of others, we cannot help but recognize our own. The walls we build between us and them begin to soften. In that softening, we discover freedom, a heart spacious enough to hold joy and sorrow without breaking. As compassion deepens, life reveals a truth both humbling and empowering. We are not isolated islands, but waves of one vast ocean. To understand this interconnection is to step into wisdom, the next chapter of our journey. Interconnection is not just a philosophy, it is the pulse of existence itself. Each life is like a thread woven into a vast tapestry, invisible when seen alone, yet essential to the whole pattern. When one thread is pulled, the fabric trembles. When one is broken, the design shifts. To live wisely is to see that no action, no thought, no word exists in isolation. The Buddha once said, "This is because that is." With these simple words, he pointed to the web that binds us. Rain falls, rivers swell, crops grow, and people eat. A kind gesture offered in silence ripples outward in ways we may never witness. Even suffering, when acknowledged, can soften another heart to kindness. Think of a single candle lit in a dark hall. Alone, it offers light only to a small corner. But when it touches another wick, and another soon, the entire hall glows. None of the candles loses its flame in sharing. Instead, the brightness multiplies. Our lives work the same way. Generosity given does not diminish us, but expands what we are. I once met a woman who dedicated herself to planting trees in barren soil. At first, she was mocked. One tree cannot change the land. But she kept planting season after season. Years later, a grove rose where there had been only dust. Birds returned, shade spread, and children played beneath the branches. She smiled and said, "I only planted what I could. The trees did the rest." Her story reminded me that each act, no matter how small, entwines with countless others, creating futures we cannot yet see. The illusion of separation often leads us to fear and conflict. We build walls, forgetting that the same wind moves through all windows. But when we awaken to our shared ground, compassion is no longer an effort. It becomes instinct, like water flowing to the lowest place. Consider the ocean. Each wave rises with its own shape, its own energy, its own moment of glory. Yet all waves belong to the same sea. To mistake ourselves as separate is to forget the source that holds us. When we see through this illusion, the urge to harm dissolves, for in harming another, we disturb the water we ourselves are made of. Interconnection is not meant to burden us, but to free us. For when we realize we are part of something larger, we no longer carry life alone. The joy of one becomes the joy of many. The healing of one ripples into countless lives. So the next time you feel small, remember even the whisper of a single thread keeps the fabric of the universe intact. Your presence matters not because of its grandeur, but because of its belonging. And as this awareness deepens, another clarity arises. To live fully connected, one must also live with awareness, the practice of mindfulness that allows us to see each moment without distortion. From here, the journey turns toward presence, sharpened into wisdom. Mindfulness is often mistaken for a lofty practice reserved for monks in remote monasteries. Yet mindfulness is not escape. It is intimacy with life as it unfolds. It is the art of seeing clearly, without being swept away, of tasting reality, without the bitterness of distraction. The Buddha once described mindfulness as the lamp we carry in the night. Without it, the path is a blur. With it, each step reveals its form. To walk without mindfulness is to stumble in a fog of habit, reacting rather than living. To walk with mindfulness is to notice the ground beneath your foot, the breath entering and leaving the moment as it truly is. Imagine holding a crystal in your palm. At first, you see only its surface dull and ordinary, but when you hold it up to the light, it refracts into countless colors. The crystal did not change. Your way of seeing did. In the same way, life does not always need to change for beauty to appear. What shifts is the clarity with which we attend to it. I once met a teacher who asked his students to eat a single raisin as if it were the most important meal of their lives. At first, the students laughed, but as they slowed down, noticing the texture, the scent, the burst of flavor, they discovered how much life they had been ignoring in their daily rush. The raisin was small, but it revealed a vast truth. Awareness transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Mindfulness is not about perfection. Thoughts will wander, emotions will surge, distractions will intrude. But the practice is in the return, the gentle act of guiding the mind back again and again, like a shepherd bringing the flock to safety. Each return strengthens the heart. Each return deepens presence. Think of sitting by a window during a storm. Rain lashes the glass. Thunder shakes the walls, yet you remain inside, dry and still. The storm continues, but you see it without being drowned by it. Mindfulness is that window, the capacity to witness without being consumed. When we live with awareness, even suffering changes. Pain does not vanish, but it becomes bearable, like carrying a heavy basket with both hands instead of dragging it behind. Joy too becomes sharper, not because it grows larger, but because we finally pause to notice it. So if your life feels blurred, begin simply. Take one breath and truly know it. Place one step and truly feel it. These are not trivial acts, they are the doorway into reality. To live mindfully is to live awake, and to live awake is to truly be alive. As mindfulness deepens, it naturally leads us further into wisdom. For when we see clearly, we not only live fully in the present, but also begin to understand the nature of reality itself. And from that understanding, freedom quietly blooms. Wisdom is not a collection of facts. It is a way of seeing. While knowledge fills the mind, wisdom clears it. Knowledge may count the stars. Wisdom looks at the night sky and understands silence. To live with wisdom is to recognize the patterns beneath appearances, the truth beneath illusion. The Buddha once said, "Just as the ocean has but one taste, the taste of salt, so too does the Dharma have but one taste, the taste of freedom." Wisdom is that freedom. Freedom from blindness. Freedom from endless reaction. Freedom from the illusion that we are separate and permanent. Imagine standing before a mural painted on a wall. From too close, you see only scattered shapes and brushstrokes. Nothing makes sense. But step back, and the whole design comes alive. Wisdom is that step back, the shift in perspective that allows life's fragments to reveal their coherence. I once heard of a farmer who was devastated when his horse ran away. His neighbors mourned for him. Such bad luck. But days later, the horse returned with 3 more wild horses. Such good fortune, they exclaimed. Soon after, the farmer's son broke his leg trying to ride one. How tragic, they cried. Yet because of the injury, the son was spared from being taken to war. The story teaches that what we call fortune or misfortune is often incomplete. Only time reveals the larger picture. Wisdom is the patience to wait before labeling life. To live with wisdom is to know that life is fluid like clouds shifting across the sky. No single moment defines us, no passing storm lasts forever. When we cling too tightly, we mistake the cloud for the sky itself. But wisdom reminds us the sky is vast, unchanged, always open. Think of a sculptor chiseling marble. Each strike seems like destruction, but slowly form emerges. From chaos, meaning takes shape. Wisdom is the sculptor's eye, seeing the figure hidden within the stone long before others can. Wisdom does not remove sorrow, but it reframes it. It does not eliminate challenges, but it shows their purpose. A cracked bell may no longer ring perfectly, yet its tone carries a haunting depth that perfection could never produce. In the same way, wisdom allows us to see beauty even in imperfection, meaning even in pain. So if confusion clouds your path, pause. Instead of demanding immediate answers, let your perspective widen. Step back, breathe, and allow the picture to reveal itself. In time, wisdom will whisper, "This too belongs, and this too shall pass." With wisdom as our guide, the heart begins to understand reality more gently, and from this understanding arises equanimity, the calm balance that allows us to meet both joy and sorrow without losing ourselves. Equanimity is often misunderstood as indifference, as if calmness meant the absence of feeling. But true equanimity is not coldness, it is steadiness. It is the still center of a spinning wheel, unmoved, though the rim turns wildly. It is the ability to remain grounded while joy and sorrow dance around us. The Buddha described equanimity as a mountain. Winds of praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain may strike its surface, but the mountain remains unmoved. Its strength lies not in resisting the weather, but in its rootedness. Likewise, a wise heart does not deny emotion, but holds it with balance, refusing to be swept away. Imagine a sailor guiding a ship across shifting seas. Some days the waters rise with storms. Other days they lie smooth as glass. The sailor cannot control the ocean, but he can steady the rudder. Equanimity is that rudder, the capacity to steer, not by denying the waves, but by moving with them wisely. I once met a man who had faced both great success and devastating loss. He told me that the applause once thrilled him, but it also enslaved him. The criticisms once crushed him, but they also revealed his fragility. Over time, he learned to treat both like weather passing over the same field. The sun warms the rain, nourishes the storm tests, he said. But the soil remains. His words carried the calmness of a heart no longer pulled apart by extremes. Equanimity does not erase love or passion. Rather, it protects them from distortion. Without balance, joy turns to greed and sorrow to despair. With balance, joy becomes gratitude, and sorrow becomes compassion. It is the middle space where emotions are honored but not obeyed blindly. Think of a musician tuning an instrument. Too tight, and the string snaps. Too loose, and the sound falters. Only when the tension is balanced does harmony appear. In the same way, equanimity is the tuning of the heart, not too rigid, not too slack, but resonant and steady. When you cultivate equanimity, you begin to see life's events less as personal victories or defeats, and more as seasons passing across the same earth. Spring blossoms, autumn sheds, winter rests, summer ripens. Each has its place, and none defines the land forever. So if you feel tossed between highs and lows, pause, place yourself at the center, like the still flame of a lantern shielded from the wind. The world may rush around you, but within, there can remain a clear, unwavering light. From this balance of equanimity, a deeper peace begins to form, not fragile, not fleeting, but abiding. And from that peace rises the possibility of liberation, the freedom the Buddha pointed to as the heart of the path. Liberation is not a distant reward in some hidden realm. It is the quiet freedom discovered in this very life when the chains of craving and fear fall away. The Buddha called it the unshakable release of the heart. To taste it is to realize that nothing outside can imprison us if the mind itself is unbound. Imagine a bird kept in a golden cage. Though the bars shine, they still confine. One day, the door is left open. The bird hesitates, clinging to what is familiar, until finally it spreads its wings. The sky was always there, vast, waiting, yet freedom only came when the bird trusted itself to fly. So it is with us. The door of release has never been closed. It is our grasping that keeps us inside. I once met a woman who spent years consumed by resentment toward her family. Every memory was like a chain rattling at her ankles, but after a period of deep reflection, she began to ask, "Who suffers each time I hold on?" She realized that in carrying her anger, she was the one bound. When she slowly loosened her grip, her life did not erase the past, but it opened into space where joy could finally enter. Liberation does not require erasing the world. It requires seeing through it, understanding that possessions, titles, and judgments are like sand castles on the shore. For a time, they are beautiful, but the tide eventually arrives. To cling is to suffer. To release is to smile at the impermanence and let the waves smooth the sand again. Think of a kite rising in the sky. Its dance looks free, yet it is bound by the string in someone's hand. If the string is cut, the kite does not collapse. It soars higher. Our attachments are like those strings we believe they give us control, but in truth, they limit our flight. Only when we dare to loosen them do we experience the vastness of the open sky. Liberation is not escape from life, but a deeper embrace of it. It allows us to walk through chaos without being consumed to love, without clinging to let go without despair. It is not the end of responsibility, but the end of slavery to fear and desire. And perhaps the greatest surprise is that freedom is not loud. It does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives quietly, like dawn seeping through a window, soft but undeniable. One morning you simply realize that the heaviness has lifted, that the walls were never solid, that your heart can breathe fully at last. So if you long for freedom, begin here with the courage to see clearly, to let go gently, and to trust that the sky of liberation has always been above you. From this glimpse of freedom, a final truth becomes clear. Liberation is not a solitary achievement, but a light meant to be shared. And so the journey turns toward the radiance of living for the benefit of all beings. When freedom awakens in the heart, it does not remain a private flame. True liberation naturally shines outward, like a lamp in the window, guiding travelers in the night. Its purpose is not to boast of brightness, but to offer direction to remind others that the path home is possible. The Buddha often spoke of the boundless heart, a heart that radiates loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity without limit. To live with such a heart is to stop asking, "What can I take from life?" and to begin asking, "What can I give so life may flourish for all?" Imagine a spring hidden in a mountain. At first, its water trickles quietly unnoticed, but as it flows, it nourishes roots, fills rivers, and eventually reaches fields where farmers and families depend upon it. The spring does not choose who drinks, it simply gives. In the same way, a liberated heart flows naturally into generosity, not out of obligation, but out of abundance. I once met a teacher who devoted decades to caring for orphans. His own life was simple, his possessions few. When asked why he gave so much, he smiled gently and said, "When you realize the world once carried you in your weakness, you cannot help but carry others in theirs." His words revealed that compassion is not sacrifice, but continuation. The cycle of care passed from one to another. Living for the benefit of all beings does not demand grand gestures. Sometimes it is as simple as offering your full attention when someone speaks, or withholding a harsh word that might wound, or planting a tree whose shade you may never sit beneath. These small acts are like seeds scattered along a path. Though unseen at first, they eventually bloom where someone else may rest. To share freedom is to walk as a reminder that suffering can be eased. A smile may soften a stranger's burden. A moment of patience may prevent anger from spreading. A word of encouragement may awaken courage in someone who thought they had none left. In these ways, liberation ripples outward, weaving lives together. Think of the sky after a storm. Clouds break, and beams of light stretch across the horizon. The light does not belong to one person, nor does it ask permission to shine. It falls freely, touching fields, rivers, and villages alike. In the same way, when the heart is clear, its peace becomes a blessing, not just for oneself, but for all who encounter it. So to live awakened is not only to free yourself, but to become a refuge for others. A quiet refuge, not demanding attention, but always present like a tree, offering shade to anyone who chooses to rest beneath it. And as this light of freedom begins to shine for all, one last realization emerges that the journey of awakening is not a straight road to an ending, but a continual unfolding each step, another chance to embody peace, each breath, another beginning. Awakening is not a single moment of thunder and lightning. It is more like dawn unfolding gradually. At first, the horizon glows faintly. Then slowly, the landscape emerges. Trees, rivers, mountains, all revealed in their quiet detail. To awaken is to see what has always been there, hidden only by the darkness of our forgetfulness. The Buddha taught that the path is walked step by step. One breath, one thought, one act of kindness at a time. There is no sudden leap that carries us to the summit. Instead, each moment of awareness is like a stone carefully laid on a bridge. Eventually, the crossing is possible, and we realize we have been building the way all along. Imagine a garden tended patiently over years. At first, the soil is dry, the weeds stubborn. But with steady care, watering, pulling, planting green shoots, emerge blossoms, follow fruit ripens. Awakening too grows through this patience. Each small act of mindfulness is a seed, Each act of compassion is a bloom. Over time, the heart itself becomes a garden where others may find rest. I once met a young woman who believed she had failed in her practice because her mind kept wandering, but her teacher told her, "Every time you return is a victory." She realized that awakening was not about never drifting, but about returning again and again, like a pilgrim who stumbles yet continues on the road. Slowly, her restlessness softened, and she discovered a peace she once thought unreachable. Awakening is also humility, for the more we see, the more we realize how vast the unknown remains. Like standing at the edge of the ocean, we may gather shells along the shore, but the sea itself stretches far beyond sight. Wisdom is not claiming to own the ocean, but bowing to its depth. Think of life as a manuscript written in invisible ink. Without light, the page seems blank. But when the flame is brought near, the hidden words appear. The teachings of existence have always been inscribed in us. Awakening is simply the moment we learn to read them. This journey never truly ends because each day offers new pages, each moment another chance to see clearly. The awakened heart does not cling to the idea of completion. It walks with curiosity, with reverence, with openness to whatever unfolds. So if you wonder whether you are far from awakening, remember this: the fact that you are asking is itself a step upon the path. Each question is a door. Each breath is an invitation. Each moment you pause and return to awareness is already the taste of freedom. And as the path continues, the awakened heart naturally turns toward harmony, living not only in clarity within, but in balance with the world around us. From here, the journey flows into the art of harmony with all of life. Harmony is not the absence of differences. It is the ability for differences to coexist without conflict. Just as a symphony blends strings, drums, and horns into one piece of music, life weaves countless voices together. When the heart is balanced, it becomes like a conductor, guiding the many tones of existence into resonance rather than chaos. The Buddha reminded his disciples that a wise person does not live apart from the world, but in rhythm with it. To live in harmony is not to escape sound, but to listen deeply, to hear the spaces between the notes, to understand the pauses as much as the music. Imagine walking through a bustling marketplace. Vendors shout, children laugh, animals stir. At first it feels overwhelming, but then you slow down and notice the colors, the smells, the hum of life, each adding its own layer. What once seemed noisy becomes a tapestry of vitality. Harmony is not silence, but the understanding that every sound has its place. I once met a craftsman who built wind chimes. He explained that the beauty of the chime did not come from making each tube identical, but from shaping them differently so they could create a chorus when touched by the wind. If they were the same, he said, they would not sing. His words carried a lesson. Harmony is not sameness, but difference embraced in balance. Living in harmony means recognizing that others' paths need not mirror ours. The river flows differently than the mountain stands, yet both belong to the landscape. To demand conformity is to flatten life. To allow diversity is to enrich it. Think of the seasons. Spring's blossoms, summer's heat, autumn's shedding, winter's stillness. Each has a distinct character, yet together they form the wholeness of a year. If one season tried to dominate, all the cycle would break. In the same way, harmony is the wisdom of allowing each person, each moment, each experience to have its rightful place. When harmony is cultivated within, we begin to meet the world without resistance. The The harsh word does not automatically ignite anger. The moment of difficulty does not instantly create despair. Instead, we hold them as parts of a larger pattern. The discord becomes less threatening, for we trust it will eventually blend into balance. So if you long for harmony, begin with your own breath. Let the inhale and exhale find their rhythm. Let your inner voice soften enough to hear others. In this practice, you will discover that harmony is not something imposed from outside, but something grown from within a spaciousness that allows life to sing in its many tones. And once harmony takes root, the heart naturally leans toward gratitude, the recognition that every note of life, even the dissonant ones, contributes to the music of our existence. From here, the path turns toward the practice of thankfulness. Gratitude is the art of seeing abundance where the world teaches us to see lack. It is not about ignoring hardship, but about recognizing that even in hardship, there are gifts woven quietly within. When we live with gratitude, life no longer feels like a desert of demands. It becomes a garden of offerings. The Buddha once said, "Let us rise and be thankful for. If we did not learn much today, at least we learned a little. If we did not learn a little, at least we did not fall ill. If we fell ill, at least we did not die." Let us all be thankful. Gratitude transforms what we have into enough, and what we experience into lessons. Imagine receiving a letter written by the hand of life itself. Every day it arrives, though most of us toss it aside unopened. Gratitude is the practice of breaking the seal of reading the simple blessings we've been given. The breath that comes without asking, the food that nourishes the sun, that rises without charge. I once spoke with an old farmer who, after losing nearly everything in a flood, was asked what kept him going. He pointed to a small patch of surviving crops. "This is not much," he said, "but it is enough to start again. The flood took many things, but it left me tomorrow." His words taught me that gratitude is not about counting possessions, but about valuing possibilities. Think of a painter's palette. Some colors are bright, others muted, some dark, some light. Alone, each might seem incomplete, but together, they allow the painter to create a whole image. Gratitude is like that, the willingness to accept every shade of experience as part of the picture, even the darker tones, knowing they give depth to the light. Living with gratitude changes how we move through the world. Complaints lose their grip. Envy loosens its claws, and suddenly, the ordinary feels miraculous. A sip of water becomes a celebration. A shared smile becomes wealth. Life does not grow easier, but the heart grows softer, able to see gifts where once it saw only burdens. Try pausing before sleep tonight. Recall 3 things, small or large, that brought you warmth today. A kind word, a bird's call, the safety of a roof above you. Let these memories settle in the heart, like embers glowing in the dark. Such a practice is simple, but over time it forges a habit of thankfulness that can outshine despair. Gratitude does not deny pain, but it places pain in a larger frame. It whispers, "Even here, something sustains you." In that whisper, resilience grows, and life regains its quiet beauty. And as gratitude deepens, it naturally opens the door to joy, not the fleeting thrill that rises and falls with circumstance, but the kind of joy that is steady, luminous, and rooted in the heart itself. Joy in its deepest form is not dependent on fortune or comfort. It is not the laughter that rises only when life is kind. It is the steady flame that glows even in darkness. True joy is born when the heart learns to rest in the present and to delight in being alive no matter the circumstances. The Buddha described this joy as a natural fruit of practice, when craving loosens, when gratitude blooms, when compassion flows, Joy arises like a spring from underground, clear and inexhaustible. It is not something we manufacture. It is something uncovered. Imagine walking through a cave where water drips steadily from stone. At first, it seems unremarkable, but over years, the drops carve pathways, forming luminous crystals that sparkle like stars hidden in the earth. Joy is like that, not a sudden explosion, but a slow shaping of the heart until it shines quietly on its own. I once knew a man who lived with little by worldly standards. His home was modest, his belongings few. Yet his smile carried a warmth that filled every room. When asked why he seemed so content, he replied, "Each morning I wake, I already have enough. The sun rises, my body breathes, the world continues. Everything else is extra." His words revealed that joy does not come from accumulation, but from appreciation. Think of a musician playing not for an audience, but for the sheer love of sound. Each note, whether heard or unnoticed, is complete in itself. Joy works in the same way. It does not wait for approval. It arises naturally from living fully. Joy is not opposed to sorrow. The two often coexist. A mother may weep at her child's leaving home, yet within the tears rests pride and love. A mourner may cry at a funeral, yet also feel gratitude for having shared time with the departed. Joy is not the absence of grief. It is the light that remains within grief, reminding us that love has touched our lives. When we cultivate joy, even small things become treasures. The sound of rain tapping a roof, the fragrance of bread, baking, the touch of a hand in ours. These are not luxuries, they are life itself. Joy awakens when we stop overlooking them. So if you seek joy, do not look to the horizon. Look to the ground beneath your feet, to the breath in your chest, to the company of this very moment. There, joy waits patient and unassuming, ready to rise like a bird, long perched in silence, suddenly taking flight. And when joy takes root in this way, it blends naturally with peace, a peace not shaken by gain or loss, but steady as the heart that has learned to be free. From here, the path leads us deeper into the stillness that underlies all things. Peace is not the silence of an empty room, nor the stillness of a frozen pond. True peace is alive, breathing, moving quietly beneath the surface of life. It is the steady rhythm of the heart that remains calm, even when the world trembles. The Buddha often described peace as the highest happiness, not because it denies life's turbulence, but because it remains untouched by it. Peace is like the air around us, unseen, often unnoticed, yet essential. When the heart awakens to it, everything else becomes lighter. Imagine sitting beneath a vast night sky. Stars flicker, winds shift, clouds drift, yet the sky itself remains wide and open, holding it all. Peace is like that sky. It does not resist the movements of life, but allows them to come and go without losing its vastness. I once met a man who had lived through great upheaval, war, poverty, displacement. He carried many scars, yet his voice was gentle, his eyes steady. When asked how he remained calm, he said, "I stopped fighting the waves. I learned to float." His peace was not the absence of storms, but the trust that he could move with them without drowning. Think of a candle in a quiet temple. Even when the door opens and the wind stirs, the flame may flicker, but does not go out. Peace is that flame, fragile in appearance yet enduring when guarded by mindfulness. Peace does not come from controlling every circumstance, but from releasing the illusion of control. When we stop demanding that life unfold according to our plans, we begin to taste freedom. The mind no longer races to fix, to defend, to chase. Instead, it rests, and in that resting peace appears This peace is not passive. It is a strength softer than steel. It is what allows us to forgive when bitterness tempts us to stand steady, when fear tries to shake us, to speak gently when anger rises. It is a discipline of the heart born not of force, but of surrender. So if you search for peace, begin not outside, but within. Sit, breathe, listen. Notice how each breath arrives on its own without effort. Notice how thoughts rise and fade like clouds. In this noticing, a spacious calm grows, reminding you that peace has always been here, waiting for you to remember. And as peace deepens, the heart becomes not only calm, but radiant, ready to reflect wisdom and compassion outward. From here, the journey turns toward embodying peace in action, living as a source of refuge for others. To embody peace is to allow it to flow outward, not as words alone, but as presence. People may forget what we say, but they rarely forget how we made them feel. A peaceful heart becomes like cool shade on a hot day, silent, simple, yet deeply relieving for anyone who steps beneath it. The Buddha once reminded his disciples, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." In the same way, better than countless promises is the steady presence of someone who carries calm wherever they go. Imagine entering a room where a bowl of clear water rests. Even if the room is noisy and cluttered, the water remains still, reflecting everything around it without distortion. To live as a person of peace is to be like that water, a mirror that clarifies rather than confuses, a surface that reminds others of their own stillness. I once met a woman who worked as a nurse in an overcrowded hospital. She told me that often she had no answers for her patients' suffering, no cure for their pain, but she discovered that even sitting quietly, holding a hand, breathing slowly, could ease the weight they carried. Sometimes peace is not fixing, she said, but simply being. Her presence itself became medicine. Peace in action is not grand. It is the kindness of listening fully, the patience of waiting without irritation, the gentleness of choosing not to escalate conflict. It is the courage to be soft in a world that often values hardness. Think of a lighthouse on a rocky coast. It does not chase the ships nor shout at the storm. It simply stands, casting light into the darkness, steady and unwavering. Those who see it know where safety lies. In the same way, one person embodying peace becomes a guidepost for many. To live this way requires practice. The mind will be tempted to react. The ego will long to defend. But each time we return to stillness, we strengthen our ability to offer it. Just as a musician trains until harmony becomes effortless, the peaceful heart trains until calmness becomes natural. So if you wish to bring peace into the world, begin by being peace where you are. In your home, in your conversations, in your smallest choices. The ripples may seem small, but as they spread, they can calm even the widest waters. And as peace is lived, not just spoken, it reveals another truth, that the awakened life is not about escape from the world, but about presence within it, walking every step with clarity, compassion, and freedom. From here, the journey turns toward integration, carrying the teachings into daily living. Integration is where practice meets the dust and breath of daily life. It is one thing to speak of compassion in a quiet hall, another to carry it into traffic, into arguments, into the weary hours of work. The awakened path is not meant for the mountaintop alone. It is meant for the marketplace, the kitchen, the streets where life unfolds without pause. The Buddha once said, "As the lotus rises from the mud unstained, so too may the wise live in the world unsoiled by it." integration is this lotus life, not separate from the mud, yet not bound by it. Imagine a craftsman shaping clay on a wheel. His skill is not measured by how clean his hands remain, but by the vessel he shapes while covered in earth. In the same way, our wisdom is not proven by avoiding the mess of life, but by creating something meaningful within it. I once met a school teacher who practiced meditation each morning. She told me that her real test came not during meditation, but when facing a restless classroom. Every time I breathe with patience before raising my voice, I am practicing, she said. Her students may not have known the word mindfulness, but they felt its presence in her calm. This is integration wisdom, woven into the ordinary fabric of living. Think of a river that flows through villages. It does not ask whether the fields are poor or rich, whether the people are grateful or indifferent. It simply flows, bringing nourishment wherever it passes. Integration is like that river. The teachings do not stay hidden in books or temples. They move through every action, word, and choice, offering sustenance without discrimination. To live this way does not mean perfection. There will be moments of forgetting, of anger, of clumsiness. But integration is not about never falling. It is about returning. Each return is like a blacksmith reheating metal strike after strike. The shape becomes truer, stronger, more resilient. The true measure of spiritual practice is not how we sit in meditation, but how we rise from it. Do we carry stillness into our speech? Do we bring compassion into our decisions? Do we remember presence when the world pulls us into distraction? These questions are the heart of integration. So if you wonder how to live, the teachings start where you are. Wash the dishes with awareness. Speak to your loved ones with gentleness. Work with integrity even when unseen. These small acts are not separate from awakening. They are awakening itself in motion. And as practice is woven into daily life, another realization shines. The journey of awakening is never solitary. We walk together, shaping one another, each step a shared thread in the vast fabric of humanity. From here, the path turns toward community and shared belonging. Community is not merely the gathering of people in one place. It is the weaving of lives into a shared fabric where each thread strengthens and colors the whole. Alone, a single strand may fray. Together, the strands form something enduring. In the same way, our spiritual journey deepens when it is held and supported by others. The Buddha established the Sangha, a community of practitioners, knowing that awakening is not sustained in isolation. Just as fire needs both fuel and air to burn brightly, the heart needs companionship and guidance to stay alight. Imagine a flock of geese flying across the sky. No single bird carries the entire burden of the journey. They take turns leading, and when one grows tired, another steps forward. In this shared rhythm, they cross vast distances no one bird could endure alone. Community is like that, a pattern of mutual support where strength rotates and belonging sustains. I once heard of a small village that endured a severe drought. Each household's well had nearly run dry. Instead of despairing, they dug a communal reservoir, pooling what little water they had. Though no family had enough for themselves together, they survived. The story revealed a truth: sometimes what we cannot do alone becomes possible when shared. Living in community teaches humility. It reminds us that our joys and sorrows ripple outward. A harsh word can wound more than the one it is spoken to. An act of kindness can uplift more than the one it is directed toward. Like ripples across a pond, every action extends further than we imagine. Think of a choir singing in harmony. A single voice may tremble, but joined with others, it becomes part of something fuller, richer, stronger. The beauty lies not in erasing differences, but in blending them into resonance. A true community does not demand sameness, it celebrates diversity while holding a common rhythm of care. When we walk together, even silence is shared. A group sitting in meditation breathes as though with one lung. A circle of friends listening deeply creates space where burdens lift without a word. Community is not just the sum of individuals. It is the field that grows between them, nourishing each as it nourishes all. So, if you wish to sustain your practice, seek companions on the path. Walk beside those who remind you of your highest self. And remember, being part of a community is not only about receiving it, is about offering your presence, your kindness, your listening, so the circle remains whole. And as community strengthens the journey, it awakens another truth, that compassion is never meant to stop at the edges of our circle. The heart once opened begins to embrace not just those near to us, but all beings everywhere. Compassion is the natural flowering of a heart that has touched both suffering and freedom. It is not pity that looks down on another, but a recognition that says, "Your pain is my pain. Your joy is my joy." True compassion does not divide the world into giver and receiver. It dissolves the walls that separate. The Buddha compared compassion to rain that falls on all fields, nourishing crops, without asking which farmer deserves the harvest. Compassion, when genuine, does not measure worthiness, it simply flows, because the heart cannot help but respond. Imagine a lantern placed in the dark. It does not choose where its light falls. It shines freely, illuminating both path and stone, both traveler and beggar alike. Compassion is that light, indiscriminate, steady life-giving. I once heard the story of a doctor in a war-torn region. He had little medicine, often no tools, and faced endless exhaustion. Yet he sat beside each patient with full attention, listening even when he could not heal. Many later said that his presence itself restored their will to live. His compassion was not in curing bodies, but in honoring humanity. Think of a tree standing in a dry plain. Birds find shade in its branches. Travelers rest against its trunk. Animals nibble at its fallen fruit. The tree does not withhold its gifts. Even broken limbs become fuel for fire. Even fallen leaves enrich the soil. Compassion works like that, giving without calculation, nourishing even when unnoticed. Compassion is not weakness. It often requires great courage to open the heart when the world teaches us to guard it, to forgive when hurt, to help when tired, to speak kindly when anger presses on the tongue. These are acts of strength, not fragility. When compassion awakens, we begin to see that every being carries unseen burdens. The sharp word of a stranger may come from hidden wounds. The cruelty of another may be born of their own suffering. Compassion does not excuse harm, but it understands its roots, and in understanding chooses not to add more poison to the world. So if you wish to live compassion, begin small. Offer patience where irritation arises. Lend a hand where it is easiest to look away. Even a smile can be medicine. Even silence when filled with presence can be healing. Each act is like a drop of water falling into a dry well. Slowly, steadily it fills. And as compassion flows outward, it naturally deepens into love. Not the narrow love that clings or demands, but the boundless love that sees all beings as worthy of care. From here, the path expands toward the limitless heart. Love in its boundless form is not the possession of one or the longing for another. It is the vast recognition that all beings share the same breath of existence. To love in this way is to stand beneath the sky and realize it shelters everyone, equally stranger and friend, enemy, and kin. The Buddha described this love as metta, loving kindness that extends without boundary. It is like fire that warms anyone who comes near, regardless of who they are. It does not shrink when challenged, nor does it cling when returned. Imagine a river flowing toward the sea. It does not demand thanks from the fields it nourishes along the way. It simply moves, giving itself to everything it touches. Boundless love works the same way. It offers without asking, and in the giving, it becomes inexhaustible. I once met a woman who cared for abandoned animals in her village. People often mocked her, saying she wasted her life. Yet she replied, "Their hunger is no different from ours, their thirst no less real. If I can relieve it even for one moment, then love has done its work." Her life was not measured by wealth, but by the circle of warmth she left behind. Think of the sun rising each morning. It does not decide which gardens to bless and which to ignore. Its light falls equally on palace walls and broken huts, on fields of grain and barren soil. Whether received or not, it shines. Boundless love radiates in this way, not selective, not conditional, but simply itself. This love does not erase suffering, but it transforms how we hold it. To see another's tears and not turn away is love. To feel another's fear and respond with steadiness is love. It is not sentimental sweetness. It is the fierce willingness to remain open when closing off would be easier. Living with boundless love does not mean agreeing with everyone, nor does it mean never setting boundaries. Rather, it means that even when we must oppose actions, we do not abandon the recognition of shared humanity. It is the ability to say no without hatred, to stand firm without forgetting dignity. So if you wish to grow this love, begin where you are. Offer kindness to those you meet today, even in small gestures. Wish well for those you do not know. Extend care not only to those who please you, but also to those who challenge you. Each act expands the circle until it no longer has edges. And as love widens without limit, it reveals the deepest truth of all, that separation itself is an illusion. What we call self and other are threads woven into the same fabric. From here, the journey moves toward oneness, the recognition of interbeing. Oneness is not the erasure of individuality, but the realization that beneath our differences, we are bound by the same essence. The Buddha called this interbeing the truth that nothing exists in isolation. To awaken to oneness is to see that every breath we take is shared, every step we make rests on the earth that carries all. Imagine a forest. Each tree appears to stand alone, yet beneath the soil their roots intertwine, exchanging nutrients, warning one another of danger, sustaining life together. What looks like separateness is in truth a hidden network of connection. Humanity is no different. Though our lives appear divided, the roots of our existence are one. I once met a monk who described this unity beautifully. Holding a simple bowl of rice, he said, "In this grain lives the farmer's labor, the rain's generosity, the sun's warmth, the soil's patience. When I eat, I am not eating alone. The universe is eating with me." His words revealed that oneness is not a philosophy, but a lived experience. Every act is participation in a greater whole. Think of waves rising and falling on the sea. Each has a unique shape, a distinct moment of appearing and vanishing. Yet none is separate from the ocean. To see oneself as a wave is to feel fragile. To realize one is also. The ocean is to know there is no end. Oneness is that realization. Living with awareness of interbeing changes everything. we begin to treat the earth not as a resource, but as part of our body, other people not as strangers, but as extensions of our own heart. Anger softens when we see that to harm another is to harm ourselves. Generosity grows when we realize that in giving, we are only returning to the whole what already belongs to it. Even suffering takes a new shape in this light. The tears of one become the call of many. The healing of one becomes the relief of countless others. Oneness transforms compassion from a choice into a natural response, like the left hand instinctively rushing to soothe a wound on the right. So if you wish to touch this truth, pause the next time you drink water. See the cloud, the mountain, the river, the countless hands that carried it to you. In that single sip, the universe gathers. In that simple act, oneness reveals itself. And as the truth of oneness deepens, another mystery unfolds: impermanence. For it is only by seeing that all things change that we can truly honor their place in the great fabric of life. Impermanence is the quiet teacher that walks beside us from birth to death. It does not shout. It simply shows again and again that nothing stays the same. To see impermanence is not to despair. It is to awaken to the fragile beauty of existence. The Buddha often compared life to a dewdrop on a blade of grass. It glimmers brilliantly in the morning sun, yet within hours, it vanishes, absorbed back into the air. The truth of impermanence is not cruel. It is what makes the dewdrop so precious in its brief shining. Imagine watching autumn leaves drift from a tree. Each leaf turns gold or crimson, then falls, returning to the soil that once nourished it. From that soil, new life will grow. Impermanence is not just an ending. It is the cycle that makes renewal possible. I once spoke with a man who had lost a dear friend. Through tears, he told me, "If our time together had been endless, I might never have cherished it. Knowing it was finite, I held it closer." His grief was real, but so was his gratitude. Impermanence had carved both loss and love into his heart. Think of a sand mandala created by monks. Hours, even days, are spent shaping intricate patterns of vibrant color. When complete, the mandala is swept away in a single gesture. This is not destruction, but teaching beauty lives in the making, not in permanence. The value is in the presence, not possession. Impermanence frees us from clinging. We begin to understand that joy cannot be captured. Sorrow cannot last forever, and even our own identity is a river always flowing. This recognition softens the grip of fear and helps us meet change with grace rather than resistance. When we embrace impermanence, gratitude deepens. Each moment becomes an unrepeatable gift: the smile of a child, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of rain against the window. These are not ordinary events. They are fleeting miracles here for an instant, then gone. So if you wish to live fully, do not turn away from impermanence. Sit with it. Let it remind you that nothing is guaranteed, and therefore everything matters. To see change is to love more deeply, forgive more quickly, and hold life with open hands. And when impermanence is truly understood, it leads us naturally to the heart of acceptance, the gentle wisdom of letting go, not in defeat, but in trust that each ending gives birth to a new beginning. Acceptance is not resignation, nor is it passive surrender. It is the wisdom of opening the hands when they ache from clinging too tightly. To accept is to acknowledge reality as it is without the armor of denial or the weight of endless resistance. The Buddha once taught peace comes when we stop fighting with reality. Acceptance is that peace, not the absence of pain, but the end of struggling against what cannot be changed. Imagine standing on a shore watching waves roll in. To fight them is to exhaust yourself, pushing against a force far greater than your strength. But to stand with awareness, letting the waves wash around your feet, is to discover you can remain steady without needing to control the ocean. Acceptance is that steadiness. I once met a woman who suffered from a chronic illness. At first, she lived in constant war with her body demanding it return to what it once was. Over time, she learned to soften her fight, to listen, to care for herself gently. Her condition did not vanish, but her suffering lessened. "I still carry pain," she said, "but I no longer carry the anger that made it heavier." Acceptance gave her back her life. Think of the sky when clouds gather. Some days it is clear, others stormy, yet the sky never refuses its weather. It does not cling to the sun, nor reject the rain. It holds all with spaciousness. To practice acceptance is to become like the sky, able to contain what arrives without breaking. Acceptance does not mean we stop acting. It does not mean tolerating injustice or surrendering to despair. Rather, it is the ground from which wise action grows. Only when we see clearly can we choose our steps without being blinded by denial or resentment. Living with acceptance also changes how we hold loss. When we understand that nothing belongs to us forever, not possessions, not roles, not even relationships, we learn to love more deeply while we have them, and to let go more gently when they pass. So if you wish to practice acceptance, begin small. Notice the delays in traffic, the mistakes you make, the imperfections in those you love. Instead of tightening, breathe. Instead of demanding, soften. Slowly, the heart learns that acceptance is not weakness. It is strength born of clarity. And when acceptance takes root, the heart ripens into serenity, a deep calm that does not come from avoiding life, but from living fully within it, unshaken by its constant tides. Serenity is the quiet bloom of the heart that has learned to rest. It is not the stillness of a pond frozen by winter, but the gentle flow of a river that moves without hurry, carrying everything with ease. Serenity comes when we no longer chase what flees or resist what arrives, when we trust the rhythm of life enough to be at peace within it. The Buddha spoke of serenity as the balance that arises when craving is released. It is not indifference. It is intimacy without attachment. Serenity allows us to sit in the middle of life's contradictions, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, beginning and ending, and remain steady like a tree whose roots run deep enough that no storm can uproot it. Imagine sitting in a garden at dusk. The world is neither fully light nor fully dark. The air carries both the warmth of day and the cool of night. In this in-between space, the heart rests naturally without grasping for one or the other. Serenity is that state, the gentle embrace of what is without demand for what should be. I once met a teacher who described serenity in simple terms. It is the space between the notes of a song. Without the pause, music would be noise. With the pause, it becomes melody. His words revealed that serenity is not the absence of action, but the quiet that makes action meaningful. Think of a mountain lake high above the clouds. Even when winds stir the surface, the depths remain calm, untouched. Serenity is found not in silencing all movement, but in touching that depth within ourselves that is never disturbed. Serenity also changes how we meet others. When someone speaks with anger, serenity lets us listen without being pierced. When someone suffers, serenity allows us to offer presence without being overwhelmed. It is the calmness that steadies not only ourselves, but also those around us, like a hearth whose warmth invites everyone to gather. Living with serenity does not mean life becomes without challenge. It means that challenges no longer consume us. We respond, but we do not drown. We act, but we are not frantic. Serenity is the spaciousness in which wisdom and compassion can breathe. So if you wish to nurture serenity, begin with the breath. Notice how it comes and goes without effort. Let it remind you that peace is not something to be forced, but something already present, revealed when we let go of struggle. And as serenity deepens, it ripens into wisdom's companion, clarity. For in the calm waters of the heart, truth reflects without distortion, guiding us toward understanding. Clarity is the gift that arises when serenity settles. It is like opening a window after a long storm. The air feels fresh, the sky becomes visible, and everything sharpens into focus. Clarity does not come from forcing the mind to see. It comes from allowing the fog of restlessness to lift. The Buddha compared clarity to a polished mirror. When covered in dust, it cannot reflect accurately. But once cleaned, it reveals things exactly as they are. Clarity is not invention. It is recognition. It does not create truth, but uncovers it. Imagine standing beside a river. When the current is wild, the water churns and clouds with mud, making it impossible to see the stones below. But when the river slows, the water clears and the bottom is revealed. In the same way, when the mind calms, clarity shows us the hidden shapes of reality. I once heard a story of a calligrapher who practiced for decades. When asked how he made each stroke so precise, he said, "My hand does not write until my mind is still." The brush moves only when the heart is clear. His art was not just about ink and paper. It was the embodiment of clarity flowing through action. Think of a lantern held in a dark cavern. At first, the walls appear endless, terrifying in their shadows. But as the flame steadies, the shapes of the cave emerge, the curves of stone, the hidden passages, the beauty that was always there but unseen. Clarity is that flame turning fear into understanding, chaos into pattern. Clarity allows us to see beyond appearances. We begin to notice that what we once called failure may have been a lesson. What we once named loss may also carry unseen gifts. Clarity widens our view so that we no longer judge each moment in isolation, but as part of a greater whole. Living with clarity transforms decisions. Instead of reacting in haste, we discern. Instead of chasing every desire, we choose wisely. Clarity is not about knowing everything. It is about seeing enough to take the next step without confusion. So if you seek clarity, do not strain your eyes. Instead, soften, breathe, and allow the mind to settle. Truth reveals itself, not to the frantic, but to the still. And when clarity illuminates the path, it leads naturally to wisdom in action, the ability to live not just with understanding, but with choices that align with the deepest truths of life. Wisdom in action is the living fruit of clarity. It is not wisdom that stays locked in books or hidden in temples, but wisdom expressed in the choices we make every day. To act with wisdom is to bring insight into the soil of reality, where it can take root and nourish life. The Buddha taught that wise action arises when we align intention, speech, and deed with compassion and understanding. It is like a wheel with spokes. When each spoke is strong and balanced, the wheel turns smoothly. When even one spoke is weak, the journey becomes uneven. Imagine a bridge built across a river. Its strength is not in a single stone, but in the alignment of many, each supporting the others. Wisdom in action is like that bridge, a structure built from countless moments of awareness, carrying us and others safely across the currents of life. I once met a man who ran a small business. He told me he could make more money by cutting corners, but he chose not to. If my work harms even one family, then the prophet poisons me too, he said. His choice revealed that wisdom in action is not measured by gain, but by harmony, a decision that benefits oneself while not wounding others. Think of a gardener planting trees. Some may take years to bear fruit, others may never be enjoyed by the planter. Yet the act itself is wisdom in motion, caring for a future that extends beyond personal benefit. In the same way, wise action is often unseen, but its effects ripple long after the moment has passed. Wisdom in action is not grand gestures alone. It is the small, repeated choices that shape a life. Choosing honesty when deceit is easier. Choosing patience when anger is quick. Choosing kindness when indifference feels safe. Each choice is like a drop of water carving stone over time, shaping character into something enduring. When we act from wisdom, we no longer move only for ourselves. We see that our footsteps leave marks on the lives of others. To act wisely is to step with care, as if walking across soft earth where future seeds will be planted. So if you seek wisdom in action, pause before you move. Ask, does this choice come from fear or love, from ego or truth? The answer may not always be perfect, but each question deepens the alignment of life with the heart of wisdom. And as wisdom is lived through action, it opens into a deeper freedom, integrity, the wholeness of living in such a way that our inner truth and outer life are no longer divided. Integrity is the quiet strength of a life aligned. It is the state in which what we believe, what we speak, and what we do flow as one continuous river. Without integrity, even great knowledge feels hollow. With it, even the simplest act carries weight. The Buddha reminded his disciples that words and deeds are not separate from the heart. If the heart is fractured, life feels divided. But when inner truth and outer action harmonize, peace arises naturally. Integrity is that harmony, a wholeness that requires no disguise. Imagine a compass held in the hand of a traveler. No matter how the terrain shifts, forests, deserts, storms, the needle always points north. Integrity is that needle, the constant guide that ensures we do not lose ourselves in the changing landscapes of life. I once heard of a craftsman who signed his name on the underside of furniture where no one could see. When asked why, he replied, "Because I see it." His words revealed that integrity is not about reputation. It is about living with an inner witness that cannot be deceived. Think of stained glass in a cathedral. From outside, it may appear dark and fragmented. But when light shines through, every piece joins into a pattern radiant and whole. Integrity is like that. When our scattered parts align, the light of truth makes life transparent and beautiful. Integrity does not mean perfection. It means consistency. To admit mistakes honestly is integrity. To keep promises even when inconvenient is integrity. To refuse to betray values for short-term gain is integrity. These acts may seem small, but together they form the backbone of a life that cannot be bent by circumstance. Living with integrity is a refuge. Others may not always agree with us, but they can trust the ground we stand on. Our presence becomes reliable, like a lighthouse whose beam can be counted on in every storm. Such steadiness not only guides ourselves but gives confidence to those around us. So if you wish to grow integrity, listen inwardly before you speak and measure your actions against the truth you already know. Do not ask whether others are watching. Ask whether your own heart can rest in what you have done. And as integrity takes root, life reveals its deepest offering: authenticity. The freedom to live as we truly are, without masks, without fear, simply as a clear expression of the truth within. Authenticity is the courage to stand in our own skin, without apology. It is not the performance of who we think we should be, nor the mask we wear to win approval. Authenticity is the freedom of alignment, the self we are within, reflected honestly in the self we show without. The Buddha often spoke of liberation as the removal of veils. To live authentically is to stop weaving those veils from fear, desire, or expectation. It is to allow the raw light of our being to shine unfiltered, unhidden. Imagine a crystal pulled from the earth. At first it appears dull, caked in dirt. But when cleaned, its natural facets catch the sun and scatter rainbows. Authenticity is not about polishing ourselves into something artificial. It is about removing what obscures the brilliance already there. I once met a musician who refused to conform to the trends of the industry. "If I play what they want, I may succeed," he said, "but I will not hear myself in the music." His songs reached fewer people, but those who listened felt something real, something alive. His life reminded me that authenticity is not measured by numbers, but by resonance. Think of a wildflower blooming in a cracked sidewalk. It does not ask whether it belongs there, nor whether anyone approves. It simply grows, expressing its nature fully, in the only way it can. Authenticity carries the same strength and unforced blooming in whatever soil we find ourselves. Living authentically does not mean acting without regard for others. It means our actions arise from truth, not pretense. When we live this way, our words carry weight because they are rooted in sincerity. Our presence becomes trustworthy because it is real. Authenticity requires vulnerability. To drop the mask is to risk rejection, but it is also to invite genuine connection. For when we reveal ourselves as we are, others recognize themselves too. The false barriers dissolve and relationships grow deeper, freer. So if you wish to live authentically, listen closely to the voice within before bowing to the noise outside. Honor the rhythm of your own being, even if it does not match the world's drum. Authenticity is not rebellion for its own sake. It is alignment with what is true. And when authenticity blossoms, it naturally opens into wholeness, the realization that every part of our journey, even the broken and unfinished pieces, belongs to the larger pattern of who we are becoming. Wholeness is the embrace of all that we are, not just the polished parts we show the world, but also the cracks, the shadows, the unfinished chapters. To be whole is not to be flawless. It is to recognize that every fragment belongs to the same story. The Buddha once compared human experience to the earth itself. Mountains rise, valleys sink, rivers carve paths, deserts stretch vast and bare, yet together they make one planet. Wholeness is like this. It holds our joys and sorrows, strengths and wounds as parts of a single terrain. Imagine a mosaic made from broken tiles. Each shard may look jagged, incomplete, even useless. But when placed together with care, they form patterns of astonishing beauty. Wholeness is that mosaic, the art of seeing how even our brokenness contributes to the larger picture. I once met a man who carried deep regrets from his youth. He spoke of mistakes that haunted him, choices he wished he could erase. But with time, he learned to see that those very mistakes had shaped his compassion, teaching him gentleness toward others. "I would not wish them again," he said, "but without them, I would not be who I am." His story revealed that wholeness is not erasing the past, but integrating it. Think of a tree scarred by lightning. The trunk may split, the bark may burn, yet new branches still grow, leaves still unfurl, fruit still ripens. The scar becomes part of its identity, but not the end of its life. In the same way, wholeness accepts scars as part of the strength that allows us to stand. Living with wholeness means no longer dividing ourselves into acceptable and unacceptable parts. It is the recognition that our imperfections are not stains to be hidden, but threads in the fabric of our humanity. When we embrace them, we become real, and in becoming real, we become whole. Wholeness also changes how we see others. Instead of reducing them to their flaws or idealizing them for their strengths, we learn to hold the totality of who they are. This deepens compassion, for we realize that everyone is walking with both light and shadow, carrying both triumph and wound. So, if you seek wholeness, begin by softening your gaze toward yourself. Gather the pieces you have pushed away, the memories you have buried, the flaws you have denied. Bring them to the circle of acceptance. Only then will you discover that the self you thought was fractured has always been complete. And when wholeness is embraced, the path reveals a final unfolding harmony with the vastness of life itself, where we no longer strive to become, but rest in simply being. Harmony with life is not about controlling the song of the world, but about learning to listen and move with it. It is the art of stepping into rhythm rather than forcing our own beat upon the universe. When we live this way, even the discordant notes reveal their place in the greater symphony. The Buddha taught that to live wisely is to walk the middle way, neither clinging nor rejecting, neither drowning in indulgence nor lost in denial. Harmony arises not from extremes, but from balance, like the steady thread that weaves patterns into fabric. Imagine a dancer moving with a partner. If she resists every turn, the dance becomes clumsy. If she yields completely, she loses her own steps. But when she listens, adjusts, and responds, the dance becomes graceful. Harmony with life is that dance, the interplay of surrender and participation. I once heard of a farmer who accepted both rain and drought with equal steadiness. The rain feeds one crop. The drought teaches me another way to plant, he said. His words revealed that harmony does not demand ideal conditions. It finds a way to move with whatever comes. Think of a bird gliding on the wind. It does not fight against the current, nor does it collapse into it. With subtle adjustments of wing and body, it transforms the invisible air into effortless flight. Harmony works like this, transforming what life offers into movement rather than struggle. Living in harmony does not mean life will always feel pleasant. Storms will still arrive, losses will still ache. But harmony allows us to meet them without being broken. It teaches us that joy and sorrow, success and failure are not opposites, but partners in shaping the melody of existence. When harmony deepens, gratitude and peace naturally arise. We begin to see that nothing is wasted. Every challenge polishes us. Every gift humbles us. Every moment belongs. Life is no longer a battle to win, but a song to join. So if you long for harmony, begin by listening. Listen to the rhythm of your breath, to the needs of those around you, to the subtle shifts of life's seasons. Respond gently, step by step, and you will find that harmony is not something imposed on the world, but discovered within it. And as harmony matures into a way of being, it reveals the final truth that liberation is not a distant goal, but the natural unfolding of a heart fully present, free to love, free to live, free to simply be. Liberation is often imagined as a distant peak, something reached only after lifetimes of striving. But in truth, it is much closer, not a mountain to climb, but a door already open. What keeps us from entering is not distance, but hesitation, the mind's habit of clinging to its chains, even when they no longer bind. The Buddha described liberation as the cooling of the fire. When the flames of greed, hatred, and delusion subside, the heart is no longer scorched. What remains is not emptiness, but freshness, like stepping into a shaded grove after walking through burning heat. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack for years so long that you forget its weight. One day, you set it down, and suddenly your body feels light, your steps effortless. The world itself has not changed. The hills are still there. The road still stretches ahead, but the burden is gone. Liberation is that lightness life as it is, without the added weight of attachment. I once met a teacher who said freedom is not about owning everything, but about needing nothing. His words revealed that liberation is not the absence of possessions, but the absence of dependence. A person with little may be freer than a king if their heart is unbound. Think of a bird that once beat its wings frantically against the bars of its cage. When the door opens, there is no explosion of sound or spectacle. There is only flight, simple, natural, inevitable. In the same way, liberation does not arrive with fanfare. It is the quiet return to our true nature. Living in liberation changes how we meet the world. Anger loses its grip because there is nothing left to defend. Fear fades because there is nothing left to lose. Even joy becomes purer because it is no longer tangled with craving. Life becomes spacious like a sky with no ceiling. And perhaps the greatest surprise is this liberation does not make us separate from the world, but more intimate with it. Free from clinging, we can finally love without fear. Free from illusion, we can finally see things as they are. Liberation is not escape. It is belonging complete and whole. So if you seek liberation, do not chase it as something far away. Sit here, breathe here. Notice what chains you still clutch and gently loosen your grip. The path does not lead elsewhere. It leads deeper into this very moment. And as liberation reveals itself, the path circles back to its essence presence. For at the heart of every teaching lies the same truth to be awake here, and now is the doorway to all freedom. Presence is the ground beneath every step of the path. Without it, even wisdom becomes theory, and compassion becomes intention unfulfilled. Presence is the simple, radical act of being here, not lost in memories, not reaching for what has not yet come, but fully awake to the life unfolding now. The Buddha often pointed his disciples back to the immediacy of the breath. Here is the path, he would say, right under your feet. Presence does not wait for perfect conditions. It can be found while washing a bowl, listening to a friend, or watching the rain fall outside a window. Imagine a candle in a dark room. If you place a mirror behind it, the flame appears multiplied, scattering into countless reflections. Yet the true light remains in the single flame. Presence is that flame, the steady source from which all reflections of thought and memory arise. To rest in presence is to return to the origin. I once met a man who described how he overcame years of restlessness. He said, "I stopped chasing peace as if it were somewhere else. I began noticing the feel of the chair beneath me, the sound of birds, the rise and fall of breath. Slowly, I realized peace had never left, I had simply been absent." His story revealed that presence is not something to gain, but something to remember. Think of a child playing with complete absorption. In those moments, there is no past or future, no worry of outcomes, only the joy of discovery. Presence invites us back to that childlike state, not naive, but pure, alive, undivided. Presence also softens suffering. Pain may still come, but when we are present, it is only what it is, a sensation, a wave, a moment. it does not spiral into the endless story of fear and resistance. To suffer without presence is to carry the weight of 1,000 imagined tomorrows. To suffer with presence is to carry only this breath, only this step. When we live with presence, even the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The sip of tea, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of footsteps on the earth, these become gateways into wonder. Life is no longer something we rush through on the way to somewhere else. It is here now, whole. So if you wish to deepen presence, practice returning. Return when the mind wanders. Return when the heart aches. Return when distraction pulls. Each return is a homecoming, and with each homecoming, life grows more vivid, more real. And as presence anchors us in the here and now, it reveals the final jewel of the path awakening itself, not as a distant ideal, but as the simple clarity of being fully alive. Awakening is often imagined as lightning striking the sky, sudden, dramatic absolute. But in truth, awakening is more like the slow unfurling of a flower at dawn. Each petal opens quietly, almost unnoticed, until the full bloom reveals what was hidden all along. The Buddha described awakening not as becoming something new, but as remembering what has always been true, that life is impermanent, that clinging brings suffering, and that freedom arises when we release our grasp. Awakening is not addition, it is subtraction, removing illusion until only clarity remains. Imagine polishing a window clouded by years of dust. With each careful wipe, the outside world becomes sharper trees, sky people walking by. The world was always there. It was our vision that was obscured. Awakening is that clarity of vision, the moment when we finally see life as it is. I once heard a monk explain, "Before awakening, I was anxious about the future and regretful of the past. After awakening, the future still comes, the past still lingers, but neither owns me anymore." His words revealed that awakening does not erase life's conditions. It changes our relationship to them. Think of a bell struck in a silent hall. The sound expands pure and resonant, filling every corner without effort. Awakening is like that, an inner realization that radiates outward, transforming everything it touches, not by force, but by presence. Awakening does not remove our humanity. We still laugh, grieve, stumble, and learn. But now, each experience is held with spaciousness. Sorrow no longer suffocates joy, no longer intoxicates fear, no longer enslaves. Life is met fully, yet lightly. To awaken is to see oneself not as a separate wave tossed endlessly by circumstance, but as the ocean itself, vast, deep, unshaken by the rise and fall of form. This recognition does not come once. It deepens endlessly, like the horizon that recedes as we walk toward it. So if you seek awakening, stop searching for fireworks. Sit with your breath. Watch the sky. Listen to the quiet between heartbeats. Awakening is not elsewhere. It is here, hidden in plain sight, waiting for you to notice. And as awakening dawns, the path completes its circle presence, compassion, wisdom, freedom, all returning to the same truth. From here, what remains is to gather these insights into a closing reflection, a final bow to the journey itself. The path of awakening is not a straight road with a finish line. It is more like a circle returning us again and again to the simple truth to live fully, to love freely, to rest in presence. Each teaching mindfulness, compassion, wisdom. Freedom is not separate, but facets of the same jewel, turning in the light of awareness. The Buddha often reminded his disciples that the Dharma is like a raft. Once we cross the river, we need not carry the raft on our backs. The teachings are not meant to be clung to, but lived and then released, so that life itself becomes the practice. Imagine a traveler who has walked through forests, deserts, and mountains. At last, he returns home. He realizes that what he sought was never far away. The journey was not to find something new, but to recognize what was always within. Awakening feels like that homecoming ordinary, yet utterly transformed. I once heard a teacher say, "The greatest miracle is not to walk on water or fly through the air, but to walk on the earth with open eyes." Indeed, the awakened life is not about escaping the world, but about inhabiting it fully, eating with gratitude, speaking with kindness, resting with peace, loving without fear. Think of a lamp lit in the evening. Its flame does not fight the darkness. It simply shines. This is the way of awakening. It does not conquer life, but illuminates it. And in that illumination, we discover that we ourselves were never separate from the light. The journey of awakening does not end with enlightenment. It continues in every breath, every gesture, every encounter. It is lived in how we greet the morning, how we listen to a stranger, how we bow to impermanence. Awakening is not an achievement to display, but a way of walking gently through the world. So if you wish to live awakened, begin here. Breathe. Listen. Step. Each moment is the path. Each moment is the destination. The circle is complete, yet endlessly unfolding. May these words remind you of the vastness already within you. May you carry presence into your days, compassion into your encounters, wisdom into your choices, and peace into your heart. The journey is yours, but you do not walk it alone. The whole of life walks with you. And so, with a quiet bow, we return, not to an ending, but to the beginning that is always here. This breath, this step, this moment.